everyone. I'm Kirsten Korosec, transportation editor and many other things over at TechCrunch. And Richard and Chris, thanks for coming and talking to me today.
Thanks.
I already have Vegas voice, just so everyone knows. So I want to obviously talk about what we're here to talk about, which is the ecosystem of building the ecosystem of autonomy. But before we talk about the present and the future, I want to go back. And I'm going to go back to a moment when you were actually working on the Google self-driving project. And you had some, like an infamous sort of, not infamous, but famous kind of line or prediction. And you know where I'm going, right?
I'm getting there.
And you said at the time that your kid, who was young at the time,
Yep.
he was 16, he wasn't going to have a license, and he was going to be taking robotaxis everywhere.
Yep.
And I know the timeline slipped, right?
A little bit, not much, but a little.
But is he taking Waymos now? And does he have a license?
So the one I was talking about does have a license. He didn't get it until he was 20, and my wife and I, his mom and I, had to push him to get it. And he lives in Rochester, and so he's going to school there, so they don't have Waymo there yet. But if he could not get a driver's license, he'd be very, very happy.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
And are you taking Waymos? Because you're mostly in Silicon Valley still, right?
Yeah.
So is that your daily driver is a Waymo?
No, it's not. My daily driver is Rivian.
Okay.
And it's a lovely vehicle. But when my wife and I go out for date night, we actually often do take a Waymo.
Okay.
So,
Okay.
yeah.
And then Richard, what about you? Are you have you had a chance to be in a robotaxi? I know you've been in a self-driving truck, but have you been in a robotaxi yet?
I have not.
Okay. Well, got to get to the Bay Area or Phoenix.
We need to, yeah.
Yeah.
It's kind of magical.
We were just talking about Arizona, and we want to, but they don't go to our home there yet. So.
Yeah, not quite yet.
Yep.
So Chris, when you first co-founded Aurora, I want to say it was about 2017, and the company was doing more than just trucks. It was focused on, and you were actually talking about robotaxis and testing those. And so what and when prompted you to make that decision to jump into trucking and stick with it? Because at that time, there was a lot of competition vying. Waymo had its own program. There were a number of other companies that existed at that point, all going after the same thing.
Yeah, so when we started the company, I'd been working at what's now Waymo for many years, and one of the insights that we had gathered there was that while everyone thought highway driving was way easier than urban driving, it wasn't. It was actually just differently hard. And one of the reasons for that is just you have to see so much further than you do in an urban setting. And we didn't at the time, we just didn't see that there was a technology that could solve that problem. And so for the first couple of years in building the company, I spent a fair bit of my time going around and meeting a bunch of different companies at the time. Much like there was a lot of self-driving car companies then, everybody and their dog seemed to have a LiDAR company. And we spent time trying to find, okay, who actually has something that will solve this problem. And fortunately, Bart on our team, who leads our corporate development work, found this great set of folks in Bozeman, Montana, called Blackmore. When I started meeting with them, I was like, oh, this technology is smoke and mirrors, because we looked at that kind of idea before and said, nope, it doesn't work. Met with them, became convinced, no, it's actually real. Ended up bringing that team into Aurora, and it's been beautiful since. This special kind of LiDAR, we call it First Light. It's this special way of measuring how far away things are with lasers, and it allows us to see further than anyone else can. And that has really, once we knew we could see far enough to go after trucking, we understood that the business was one where there was a real need, where the opportunity to improve safety was real, where the economics were really meaningful and valuable. And so we thought, let's go and focus on that.
And how long was it, like around what time period was that? Because Aurora was co-founded around 2017, I said, and when you made that decision?
We started to do work on it in 2019.
Okay.
And I think we really were like, nope, this is what we're going to go do in 2020. And we had one of our long-term partners has been Volvo Truck. And we had a first partnership with them where we outfitted one of the European-style cab-over trucks and got that driving around a track, and then ultimately that program dead ended. But then we've obviously reconnected with them and had a really fruitful partnership and relationship over the last several years with them.
So right around that time, Richard, 2019, you've been in the freight and trucking industry for decades. You're now president and CEO of Hirschbach, but you had a whole other career prior to that. And I think at the time you would have been a consultant.
Yeah.
So what were you thinking as someone who had been a part of this industry for decades about all this business and nonsense about self-driving trucks that was happening at the time? Because there were a lot of startups popping up around 2019.
Yeah, and I had a chance to deal with some of those startups, some of those that aren't in business any longer, but really started to look into this concept and really got intrigued about how it could help, supply chains. I remember speaking to Kirsten Group and talking about this, and immediately I went to refrigerated and how that could really help, produce in the food industry. Not knowing that I would be actually at Hirschbach in 6 or 8 months later, but that's how I got introduced to it, and it was very interesting. I didn't know how it was going to work, or even if it would, but once I looked under the hood and saw what they were doing, I thought, wow, there's something here.
Specifically with Aurora,
Yeah.
you mean? Okay. Yeah, and I'm curious about that because there was at that time, it was sort of peak hype cycle. We were kind of starting to come down. What ultimately happened over the next few years was consolidation, a lot of programs stopping, a lot of people going to either middle mile, the refrigerator truck kind of, but shorter, or the robotaxi, and then like Aurora, you're still here standing. So congrats on that. but aside from being the last man standing here, what was it specifically about Aurora once you're at Hirschbach that made it compelling enough to take that risk? Because you must have looked around the room and gone, there's a lot of consolidation happening here. Like, this is a cool idea, but do they have staying power? So was it the business model? Was it the tech? What exactly was it?
All the above.
Okay.
They've built this ecosystem that is very impressive. So they were humble enough to listen to industry experts, drivers that had millions of miles of safe driving under their belt, the technology, just collaborated with everyone that was going to be involved, government officials, customers, shippers, I would say, and this amazing technology that they have. And they built this whole thing out, which would take us years and years to do. And what I thought at Hirschbach is we get to just plug in to the center of that. And you have all this collaboration from great big, huge companies that know what they're doing. And Aurora has been humble enough to grab a hold of that and create an ecosystem that I think is essential and critical for the success of this now and long term. So that's what really got me excited about this, is they weren't too prideful to reach out and grab other expertise and partner with them, collaborate with them, learn from them, teach them, all the way from the drivers to everyone else I just mentioned. So that was really impressive to me.
It does strike me, though, that Hirschbach's been around, I think, like since, 1935
90
or
years,
something.
yeah. We celebrated 90 years this last year.
It seems like that might be a tough sell within that company to say, to a relative newcomer in comparison to how long that company has been around and has potentially operated. So what were those conversations like? I mean, was it a tough sell within the company to say, we should be partnering with Aurora, we should be doing self-driving trucks, in this way?
Yeah, that's a great question. And I thought about that because I love our human drivers. And I've always, my whole career, for 35 years, I've really wanted to help the driver accomplish what they want. And what they tell us they want is predictability in their home time, predictability in their paycheck, just like you and I do. And I think this is a vehicle to help that. It elevates the job, right? So there's plenty of opportunity to run the interstate for weeks and weeks on end, if you want to do that. But then there's also a new job that we can create with regional and local fleets that would help support, this technology. And I think it's just another option for them. But how I got convinced is I got into the truck and had a ride along. And I remember to this day what was going on. We had a semi in front of us, a semi on the side of us, and one coming in to merge. And I thought, oh no, here it is. And it was very methodical, very calm, made great decisions. And so I thought, well, we have an ambassador group of drivers, the best of the best. And we brought them down, gave them a ride along. And once I heard, and they were kind of skeptical going in because, hey, I know how to drive this. No one's going to drive as good or better than me. And they got into this truck and had some of the same thoughts and commentary that I had after getting out of the truck. And so then they were able to go back and talk to our driving force and let them know that this is just going to elevate the job that they have. And it was really impressive to drivers that have been driving for 20, 30 years and have millions and millions of safe miles under their belt.
So Chris, were you, a little worried high stakes, right?
Yeah.
To have Richard on this ride along. Obviously it wasn't like, hopefully you weren't winging it, right? But
we do our best not
Yeah.
to just wing things.
But
That's
but
not
it
really
was
the way we work at Aurora.
but it is high stakes. You have to convince someone who potentially will be your partner, and also more importantly, some of the drivers. But what strikes me is that it's not just about it working well that one time.
Exactly.
And to me, that's the hardest piece of it.
Yeah.
So how are you going about not just doing that internally within the company to address edge cases? Are you doing more of a generalized end-to-end approach, or are you, we can get a little techie here.
We're having this
Yes.
conversation.
Yes.
Yeah.
We can
Yeah.
we can touch it. To really put it in a position where you're not sitting there going, I hope it works out every time,
Yeah, we don't want to be in that world. And just before we jump to that, like one of the things it was, to your point, it's stressful when you have people who really know what they're doing come and try and experience your technology. And it was, I think we posted the video of this, but these folks, the ambassadors from Hirschbach coming out, right? They were, let me go with skeptical that this thing could actually work, and just seeing the transformation for them within a few hours was probably one of the highlights of my career, honestly. Because the bar for us is not some arbitrary automated driving bar. We're trying to build a technology that can go out and help our customers and be on the road and be safe. And so to have folks who have made a career of that, who've driven million miles, it's just awesome. But to your question, sorry, our approach at Aurora has always been use the right tool for the job. And we try our best to avoid dogma and just kind of religious decisions. So when we look at technology, we say, okay, is this going to make the product better and safer? Is this the way we actually get it out the door? And so you see that in the fact that we use multiple different sensors. We don't just say, oh, cameras are magical or LiDAR's magical. We say, no, actually to solve this problem, LiDAR has advantages, radar has advantages, camera has advantages. We will use that. And then we'll bring the most modern machine learning techniques that are relevant to bear. But we're not going to kind of train and pray. We're not going to just like put data in one side, have something that we don't really understand, do something, and then steer and break out the other. We've actually been really thoughtful in how we decompose that system so that we can both constrain what it can do. The worst thing we could have happen is use glue to hold the cheese on my pizza moment at 70 miles an hour going down the freeway, right? Like that's okay for a large language model to come back with that. It's not okay with one of the Aurora Driver to ever do that. So we can constrain what it can express into a set of things that we know are going to be plausible. And then the other thing we can do is be able to test and validate all of this. And that's really, people get enamored with, are you using this particular model or that model? That's all very cool and important technology. But at Aurora, I think we put even more work, and it actually is harder to go through the process of convincing ourselves the thing doesn't just look like it works, but it actually works. and having conviction that we're able to go and have a 70-ton vehicle go down the road at 70 miles an hour, day in and day out. Okay, it's another level of effort and attention that, when you spend the time talking about, are you using this model, that model, you're just kind of missing the real meat of the problem, actually.
To ask it in very simple terms,
Yeah.
is it fair to say that the approach that you're using, within the self-driving system is a combination of deep learning and machine learning, but with some rules-based context in there as well?
Absolutely.
Okay.
Yeah, I think that provides these guardrails that allow us to, again, constrain, because we know there's things that we want the system to do. So, the most adherent folks to the end-to-end model would say, okay, we'll just watch people drive. Well, it turns out that if you watch people drive, they stop at stop signs 11% of the time. That's probably not cool for the automated vehicle to 1 in 10 times I feel like I'll stop. And so we want to be able to express both in terms of the validation that we know we have confidence thing will actually stop at the stop sign, but also there's places where we may want to encode that explicitly, so that we know that the model can interpolate and can use all of the magic that comes along with these large models to give human-like behavior within a set of constraints that we can express.
Richard, when you probably had a lot of deep dives with Chris and his team, and were you finding that, what is the experience that you've had with some of the truck drivers you had? Were they just all more they wanted to experience it and then they got it? Or were they asking questions about what was actually powering the perception and decision making? And how deep did they get it? What were their big concerns on that side of things?
Well, their big concern was, is this going to put us all out of a job?
Right.
That was number one. And number two, they didn't believe that this was possible, that this was kind of pie in the sky and the kind of the Jetsons scenario. But once they learned that this was going to elevate the truck driving job and that they would have all the same choices they do today, then that gave them the comfort to say, okay, let's go look under the hood and see what this is all about. And Aurora was gracious enough to give them a ride along. And they came out of that saying comments like, man, I wish the other drivers on the road would drive as good as the Aurora Driver. I think the Aurora Driver drives a lot like I do. And so that's really what convinced them is actually being in the truck, experiencing it. And then they became really good ambassadors internally to our drivers and letting them know that this isn't going to take your job. This is going to enhance your job. And so that was a big blessing for us to have them actually see it, feel it, touch it, believe it, and then communicate that back to our drivers.
So they got to experience it, and that won them over. But there are a lot of truck drivers out there in the U.S.
Yep.
I talked to the Teamsters folks. They are very concerned about trucking jobs being taken away. And what is the reality, level set? If jobs aren't going to be taken away, what is going to happen if companies like Aurora are able to deploy self-driving trucks at scale?
Yeah, again, I think you have your choice. Do you want to be a local driver, local pickup and delivery driver? Do you want to be a regional driver that funnels freight into some of these power lanes? Do you want to run the interstate? You definitely can. There is so much freight and so much business, and the economy will grow, the population will grow, and there will always be that need. But then we have the Aurora Driver that can take the tough stuff, the overnight runs that mess with your internal clock. You can get better sleep. You can get better eating and sleeping and exercising habits, and be home more with your families. So I think it's going to be a really good blessing to the industry. It's really bringing credibility and prestige, I think, to the human driver. We're finally able. This is a vehicle to finally able to give them a more, I guess, a higher quality of life. If they choose to be closer to the house. There are folks that just love the open road.
Yep.
And in my opinion, there'll always be that opportunity for them.
So do you reject the argument that there will be, job loss for human truck drivers as a result of self-driving?
I think it'll be a job change.
Okay.
Yeah. Like I said, it's an elevation of that job. It's a different job. But that same job exists today that will exist tomorrow. Even if this scales in an amazing way, it's going to take years and decades to squeeze down that over-the-road job. But I still think it's going to be available.
So in present day, Chris, well, I guess a little bit in the past, but in May of last year, 2025, you had the first driverless highway ride. And that was, I believe, from Dallas to Houston?
Houston, yeah.
And that you were at a couple of trucks at that point. So catch us up to what today's operations are, fleet size, what are we talking here in terms of freight, miles, and trips?
Yeah, so we started in April operating driverlessly. We began with one, and like I said, I got to ride between Dallas and Houston and back with a bunch of pastries in the back of the truck. It was very exciting. Actually, truth be told, it was not that exciting most of the time. Most of the time, it's this moment of and then, at some point I was watching YouTube. So that was cool. Over the course of the year, we've really been building for 2026. So when we started, we were operating in the daytime in good weather. Just between Dallas and Houston. And over the course of the last 9 months, we've moved that to operating day and night, so 24 hours a day. We expanded so we can operate driverlessly between between Fort Worth and El Paso, as well as Dallas to Houston. And then what's really exciting is 2026. So in 2026, there's going to be a series of things. So in January, we expect to unlock not just Fort Worth to El Paso, but Fort Worth to Phoenix and back. And so that's about a 1,000-mile trip. And so that's one of these really difficult trips for people to handle and deal with. We're going to begin operating in the rain, which again, one of the things that we have learned viscerally is that in Texas, it rains about 30% of the time, which means 3 out of 10 days, 3 out of 9 days kind of rate. And if you can't drive in the rain, you're not that much use to our customers yet. So we're going to solve that. And then when Q2 rolls around, we're going to have a really big milestone where we launch our second generation commercial hardware. We're going to be launching our fleet of vehicles where we'll operate once again without anybody on board. And that'll build to hundreds of trucks by the end of this year, expanded not just through Texas, not just through Arizona and New Mexico, but across the Sun Belt. It'll get to this point where next year, if you take a road trip across the southern U.S., you're going to see Aurora trucks on there, moving goods for people, helping business, and doing that safely. And so I think that's just going to be a hell of a year, honestly.
So right now you do have, and I want to be clear with it because there's been a lot of confusion about it, which is you have a human observer or a safety driver. Which is it? In the trucks right now, and why do you do that?
So we operate effectively 2 fleets today. So we have one fleet which is doing development work, and that's pushing, for those of you who are kind of nerdy into the words, that's where we're expanding our ODD, going new places, doing new things. And so there we have a person on board whose job is to make sure that the people around us and the truck is safe, and that's a safety driver. And then we have a second fleet of vehicles, which are our driverless vehicles. And those, we have a person sat on board, they're an observer, but their job is not to provide any safety benefit. The truck is actually responsible for all that. If you go onto our live feed, you can go to youtube.com/Aurora Driver and go to the live feed. You can watch our trucks operating on the road every day. And what you'll see is the trucks that are operating in driverless mode, they're sat there twiddling their thumbs, eating their Cheetos, whatever they're doing. They're not there to kind of keep the truck safe, right? Which is, it's an important distinction for us. And we've done 200,000 plus miles at this point in that driverless mode of operation.
So are these folks, the ones when you're expanding the ODD, these are people who also have like truck driving license, commercial truck
Absolutely.
driving, like.
Yes.
So the observers, do they also, and do they step in, even if they're observing and eating Cheetos, whatever, do they have the ability and authority to step in and take over the truck?
So yes, they are commercial driver's license people. They're sat in behind the steering wheel, and so by federal law, you have to have a commercial driver's license to be there. So absolutely. Their job is not to step in.
Okay.
This truck is operating. We coach them and tell, like, it's got it. Your job is to be here because one of our partners has asked us to have you sat here, and that's it.
Okay. Richard, just before we came on stage, you were saying that there was a big milestone. I think just the other day, yesterday.
Yesterday.
What exactly happened there?
We actually did our first end-to-end. So, from a customer to a customer in Texas. And that happened yesterday, which is a big deal. And that'll be kind of a lane that, we want to grow and develop with freight coming up from Mexico into Dallas.
So when you say from end to end, are we talking, and I think this is important to talk about in terms of like the ecosystem, the autonomy ecosystem, because there's been a number of different business models that have been floated around self-driving trucks. There's been the terminal, there's been, nope, from the exit to the exit, nope, server streets. So what exactly are we talking about when we say end to end?
That's a great question. So the fleets that we've been talking about, that Chris has been talking about, has been hub to hub or terminal to terminal. This is actually from a customer yard to the customer's distribution center in Dallas. So customer to customer.
And Chris, is that the end goal for Aurora? I mean, is that the business model that you're actually planning on doing, and why that?
Yeah.
Instead of doing the hub to hub thing, because that's been a popular idea.
Yeah, no, and the freeway exit to entry is a pretty good idea for people, but I don't understand how you kind of tuck and roll out of the truck as it's getting on the freeway. That seems like a terrible thing. So that was never a good idea. Our aspiration has always been to serve our customers. And one of the things you want in freight is to have to touch the truck the minimum number of times. You want to kick it out the door and have it get to where it's going, and not have to couple and uncouple it or whatever. And so, yeah, absolutely. And I think this is one of the things where we as a company have kind of fallen down in the way we tell the story. We've talked about kind of what we have been doing, which has been operating between our terminals and our hubs. But the aspiration was always to be going to customer sites, right? And we drive 5 miles from the freeway to our terminal in Houston, and that's complicated, interesting 5 miles, and we can do that anywhere else. And so going to customer sites is clearly the right answer. It's what the customers want. It's what we've been building. So it's exciting to have the opportunity to be able to showcase that.
So what has been the most complicated when you're talking about building a self-driving system? Highways, many people say this is an easier environment. Yeah. It is at higher speeds, so that the stakes are potentially much higher. But when you get to these endpoints, you're talking about the vehicle being able to, the truck being able to operate autonomously within a parking lot or distribution center. People are walking around. This also seems very high stakes. So what is it?
I think this is one of the misconceptions that's been around for a long time, that the freeway driving problem is easier than urban driving. It's different, right? On the freeway, all of the weird stuff that happens in a city, it turns out it happens on the freeway. It just happens less frequently, and it happens with a lot more kinetic energy involved. And one of the things that's like hard for people to intuit is that it doesn't really matter whether the system works most of the time. What matters is, does it work all of the time? And so even though it's like you can get a really nice demo up very quickly on the freeway, because if something weird comes up, you say, oh, that was weird, we're just gonna not deal with that right now. But once you actually get to the point where you're legitimately day in and day out running these vehicles with nobody in them, nobody there to kind of safeguard them, you actually have to deal with the weird things. There's a place in Houston where we see, we've seen once and we've seen a couple other times nearby, 6 lanes of traffic moving at 60 miles an hour, dude running across the freeway like it's Frogger, right? And like, there's real consequences there, and we have to be able to react to that and take it appropriately. We've seen police chases going the wrong way down the road. That's a fun one, right? And so these things that you think about as just urban driving problems really are there, but we have to know about it 10, 12 seconds sooner than you would in an urban setting. We don't just get to stop in the lane in the freeway in the same way if you're a robotaxi. It's kind of okay if you kind of pull the side of the road or pull the side of the lane and kind of stop. So it's a fun problem technically.
Fun, but I would assume a little bit nerve-wracking.
So this is one of the things that actually was awesome, is that we put so much care and attention into how we did what we call our safety case, which is the work we put into assessing whether the vehicle is going to be safe on the road, not just kind of if it's safe nominally, but if something breaks, is it going to be safe? Are we going to, is our culture one where if there's a problem hiding, we would know about it? That when we launched the truck, we were not worried about a bad thing happening, right? Carl, who runs our software engineering organization, told me he slept really well that night. And so it's one of these things where, we talked earlier about winging it, and hoping that things went well for Richard. Now we don't play that game, right? We just can't afford to. It takes a little bit longer. It's a lot harder. But we're building a company to be here for the next century. And to do that, you have to build trust, and you have to build a thing that is fundamentally safe and good.
So on a technological side of things and the business perspective of things, however, we've seen, for instance, Waymo, which many would argue have done everything right and have been and there was a massive power outage, and things didn't go planned.
Yep.
And so you can be, arguably, let's say, a responsible party, and things will still go awry. And so the stakes are very high. And before you answer, Chris, how is Hirschbach thinking about that? Because do you have conversations with companies like Aurora, who you're in business with, that's saying this is our line, and in these conditions we simply cannot operate, or are you kind of letting this play out? I'm just wondering what kind of guardrails you're putting in there, because there will be things like this that happen.
Yeah, and I think that's why we feel so comfortable, is because Aurora, from the very first day that I met them, have been so intentional and they go way deep. Safety's number one. They told me not to do that back there. Is number one at Hirschbach without exception, and Aurora has taken that to a whole new level. So I trust when they unlock driving in the rain, when they unlock driving at night, that they have thoroughly, painstakingly gone through every scenario imaginable and have solved for that. So it's built high trust. Trust to me is character, your intentions, your integrity, but also your competence, your capabilities and the results you produce, and you have to have both to be truly trusted. And we trust Aurora thoroughly because of their process and how they go about things. It's incredible. It's hard to describe the time, the effort, the energy, the brain power that goes into this, the machine learning, the whole, just everything, the redundant systems. They've just thoroughly gone through this. So I have a high degree of trust.
So a big part of building trust, though, is transparency.
100%.
And there is a funny thing that has been happening in the world of autonomous vehicle technology, is that a lot of companies do not want to talk about remote guidance or teleops for some reason. So can you tell me what Aurora is actually doing?
Yeah.
And explain that?
Yeah, so when we think about, for those of you maybe less steeped in the jargon, so remote support or remote assist as we use it, the way to think about this is that the vehicle itself has to be responsible for safe operation on the road. Right? We don't believe that you can safely drive a vehicle at high speed with somebody with a Logitech steering wheel in a basement across the country. That just seems crazy. And there's been a lot of research that's gone into demonstrating why that's a bad idea. So the vehicle itself has to be safe. It has to be able to do that and be safe independently. But there may be situations where it wants to ask a question and get input or advice. that is kind of non-real-time, non-safety critical in the moment. And so that's where we will have basically a pull from the truck. So it will say, hey, there's this thing, can you give me some feedback on that? But importantly, again, there's not some person with a joystick. They're often yes, no answers. We can, if for example, there's a weird traffic situation, and we want to say, you should go to the right of this thing, or you should go to the left of this thing, we can provide what we, basically a set of breadcrumbs that we want the thing to follow. But we don't have somebody monitoring the trucks 24/7 while they're operating. They wait for a pull from the truck, and then they can respond to these things.
So in the last few minutes, I think it's worth talking about the future, and you touched on it a little bit, some of the plans for 2026. But Richard, I'll put you in the hot seat first, and ask you what do you think is going to be the status of the self-driving trucks industry, which is pretty nascent, not just with Aurora, but do you think there'll be other competitors by, let's say 2028, or what do you see the status being on a commercial scale, not just development?
By 2028?
Yeah, we got 2
Couple
years.
years.
Yeah.
Yeah, I can envision there being, thousands of these self-driving trucks. As far as other companies, I don't know. I think you can count them on a couple of fingers. But I think this moves forward. We're excited about 2026. Chris said it's going to be a heck of a year. Our plan is to have quite a few of these trucks running in our fleet. And I think it, again, a blessing to the driving industry, but also customers relative to service. We're hopeful that capacity gets tight, and we can have some better years in transportation than we've had the last 3. And so customers will want that guaranteed capacity, and that reliable capacity. And if you're running a truck as if it was a team truck, two drivers in the truck, you're going to be able to do double your efforts. And so when the capacity is needed, it's going to be there for our shippers. It's going to provide that service. It's going to provide great safety, and maybe even change maybe our insurance cost. Maybe we can get more people in the insurance industry providing insurance because it's so safe. And so my hope is we start rolling down that road as well. And then I believe the utilization that we enjoy at Hirschbach and profitability there is something we're looking forward to as well in this.
Chris, how big do you expect Aurora's commercial fleet to be by 2028?
So we're a publicly traded company, so I have to be a little careful what I can say. What I can tell you is we expect to have hundreds of trucks on the road this year. Next year, that third generation of commercial hardware will come to market, and that we can produce in the 10,000 plus units per year. And so my expectation is next year, hundreds, year after, 1,000 plus, year after that, extremely exciting. Like, it goes from very exciting to very, very exciting, extremely exciting.
Oh, okay. And of course, you want to make money. And not just revenue, but you actually want to be profitable. So,
that would be nice, yeah. And we have a lot of investors that appreciate that.
And understanding that you're a publicly traded company, but what is it going to take to actually be profitable? Is it a volume question? So you have to reach X number of vehicles in order to hit that parity or even profitability mark?
Yeah, so there's a pretty fundamental equation in business, which is cost has to be less than price, has to be less than value. And so right now, our equation for that is kind of messed up, right? The hardware we have, it costs us more money to operate this thing. So we lose money per ride right now. With the generation of hardware we'll bring online in Q2 of this year, we will start to actually be able to make money on each trip, which is a nice change. And I think is a big deal in the autonomous vehicle space. As we come into 28, we'll see another material change in the cost of us operating these vehicles. And that'll start to get to the point where the scale becomes something where we can be a profitable company and it's self-sustaining. And then that's powerful, not just because it's better to make money than lose money, but the company has this mission to deliver the benefits of self-driving technology safely, quickly, and broadly. And once we get to the point where we're a profitable company, we can then start to realize that mission in more and more places. So it's going to be a lot of fun.
Cool. Well, we started with the tech and we end with the money part. So thanks so much to you two for joining me, and thanks to our audience for joining us today.
Thank you.